I'm going to close the hotel door in case the child comes in. That would be not good. Because that happened last time, Susan, remember? Right in the middle of the intro, the child started banging on the door.
Now that everyone works from home, or with children especially, you know, everyone's been in every situation imaginable.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas like I remember, you know, having to like juggle breastfeeding Lucy, who's like 23, and being on the phone and explaining that the vice president is getting very cranky. Like it was so embarrassing. And so like out of the flow. And now it's much more natural, which I so appreciate because that's what's happening.
Yes, people are much more understanding. Well, I believe we are live. Should we wait a few minutes? More people are coming in, I'm sure.
Is there a way, so it's hide video, hide non-video is how I see just you three, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how to do that, Alex?
What's that?
How to hide non-video participants so you just see those of us that are paneling?
I can't see the others.
No, you won't. You shouldn't. You don't. Okay. Your sound just went out a little bit for me, Alex.
Did, yeah, me too. I don't know what.
Yeah, how about now?
Perfect.
Better, yep.
Better?
Mm-hmm. All better.
Is it better? Can we do a sound check?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
That's perfect. Okay, so people are coming in. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started in a few minutes. Usually people hop on last minute, in my experience, pretty quickly. So, yeah, thank you for being here. And we will start shortly. Okay, let's get going. Anyways, so hello everybody. I am Talia from the Healer Collective. We're an organization that brings together different leaders in the consciousness space, and we're really here to talk about, you know, self-growth and how we can be more supportive for others during this time on the planet as well as ourselves. And tonight we're talking about a very interesting subject, the Enneagram. And we have Susan O here, who started the Enneagram Prison Project, which is she'll tell you all about it, both for people in actual prison and for people who are in the prison of the mind, which is most of us, who struggle with that. And then we have my dear friend Susan Griffin-Black, who is an entrepreneur, founder of EO and Everyone Products, and just a very wise soul. Here to share. And then we have Alex, who himself has an incredible story of hope. He was in prison for 30 years or a very long time, and used the Enneagram, met Susan and used the Enneagram to basically transform his life. And now he's a spiritual teacher, and we'll share more about that. And yeah, that's us. And then if you have any questions, please type them in the box as we go. This will be a conversation. You'll learn more about your type. You'll learn, what I love about this is you'll learn why you are the way you are, and maybe begin to empathize more with others who are different from you, and also learn to accept and love yourself more, because some parts of us are just our nature, and as we were just talking before this, during the prep, we can't change our nature. And so for me, by knowing myself, I can then do better work in the world and accept myself, and then therefore accept others better. So yeah, it's a pleasure to have you all here. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll hand it over to Susan O from the Enneagram Prison Project. Thank you.
Thank you, Talia. Thank you for having me and for inviting Alex and Enneagram Prison Project. I'm so excited to be here. And just hearing you with that introduction, I felt like, well, shoot, that's like, you got it, right? All those things, what she said. And I can say just a little bit to give people an introduction of where I came from. I'm the founder of Enneagram Prison Project. I'm also a guide for the project, which is what we call our teachers. I call myself a human potentialist because I really see the human potential in people, but I also want you to know I'm a mom. And it's so important to me because that's where I was when I learned the Enneagram as a brand new mom. I have a 22-year-old son, all boys, 19, and a 15-year-old. And I have grown up on the Enneagram and used it as a tool in my family. And I love people. And I've always loved people. I used to be in human resources. But when I learned the Enneagram, I started to go inside and try to figure out me. And I'll tell you, my marriage got a whole lot better. And everyone seems to look a whole lot better when we work on ourselves. And so I'm going to tell you a bunch of things, but I'm very curious, who are you? Who's here? And we don't get to see you, and we will have some interaction with Q&A, and we definitely welcome questions in the chat. But I'm just wondering, for everyone that's here, we sent out a few materials for you to share, for you to maybe explore your type. There's no test, but I am curious if you know your type. I'm also curious if you could share where in the world you are, what country or city. So I'm just going to pause for a second and ask people to just go ahead and do that. What type are you and where are you? Cape Cod, Ohio. Yes, there's multiple types because people aren't really sure. So where you might figure out a little bit more tonight, and we have some resources for you. San Jose, Portland. Oh, they're flashing by. Okay, San Francisco, lots of San Francisco, or Ohio. Where is that? Berkeley, Los Feliz, Chico, Sonoma. Okay. And types are all over the map. Gina, type 5. Glad we're representing the head center so well. Okay. Well, so the rest of you, don't sweat it if you don't know. Okay, here we go. Oh, lots of information. All right, thank you. I'm just giving us our bearings a little bit. And the other question that I have, I'd just like you to think about as we're getting started here is, why are you here? I mean, there's so many places to be on Zoom, and I would suspect a bunch of you have kids, so it can't be convenient. So what got you onto this space? And see if you can, thank you. Ingrid's already onto it. Yeah, to learn and to help your clients. So I'm curious if you could share a little bit about what drove you to come. What I wanted to start with is to let you know that my background with the Enneagram started when I was, like I said, when I was a new mom, and I 10 years into it, I decided to certify to become a teacher of it. And I ended up certifying with one school that is called the Narrative Enneagram, and their whole training is that types speak for themselves, and that everyone is a teacher and everyone is an expert of themselves. So that's the way that I like to work tonight and all the time. So I'm going to be explaining to you and giving you some finger holds about the Enneagram and how it works and what my approach is to the tool. And I'm pretty much wanting to get to the place where we can then interview and sort of ask questions to our panelists, and they can explain to you in real terms what it's like for them, for their type and their perspective. If we had more time, we'd do all 9 types, but it's just going to be, it will be not enough. I think we already know that. So a few other things I'd like to say. So my approach to the Enneagram is that it's a tool about what's right about you. And, the Enneagram points to so many things and gives us a lot of objective information about ourselves. And I think the tendency is that people want to go right to the pathology. They want to go right to like the difficult, hard thing about me, or the thing that's really hard about my partner, right? Which is, often what I did when I first learned the Enneagram. But it actually is pointing you to the thing that is essentially brilliant, and the thing that you came with that's completely good. And that's where I start. So if I had a goal for you tonight, it would be for you to leave with some, a little bit more compassion for yourself. And not so secretly, I would really like to invite you to try to be open to maybe falling for all the types a little bit more and seeing what's good in all of them. Because if we start there, it's amazing what we start to receive and absorb. So there's no prereq tonight, but just to keep your mind open and your heart open as we go around the Enneagram. And I also like to say that one of my favorite authors is Sherry Uber. She's not an Enneagram person per se. I think she, I don't know if Sherry would call herself a Buddhist, but she wrote a book called There's Nothing Wrong with You. And in it, she's got a little quote that says, everything outside of ourselves is an aspect of ourselves. And when I first read that, I was like, huh. And I actually kind of put the book down. Sherry writes in this cute font with little pictures. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't know if I agree with that or not. Everything outside of me is some aspect of me. I mean, that really gave me something to think about. And then I picked the book back up and I turned the page and there was one word: everything, full stop. So if you find yourself feeling like, gosh, I wish I was a 7 tonight. They seem like they're so fun. Or, oh, I wish I had the depth that, right? All of those things are reflections of you. And so inviting you to just be open to what you experience. And if a part of you is judgy and like, oh gosh, I'm glad I don't have that problem. Guess what, right? It's all just reflecting us back to ourselves. And so one of the first things I just want you to know is what I mean by the essentially good, right things about you. We call these the essential qualities on the Enneagram. And we have a diagram. Halita, would you be willing to put that up for us? We share the screen so that we can see what the essential qualities all the way around are. Thank you. I'll just give you a few orientations to what this looks like. You'll notice around the Enneagram, there's 3 different colors, first of all. These represent different centers of intelligence. And 8, 9, and 1 are at the top, and these types represent what we call the instinctual intelligence, and that's how they filter the world, through the gut, as a knowing something. It's not thinking, it's not feeling, it's what I sense in my body. And 2, 3, and 4 are the types who filter through the heart, and they have this emotional intelligence. They're highly attuned to the connectedness that we have with other people. And types 5, 6, and 7 are the types that are filtering the world through our mind, through this cognitive center of wanting to understand and have, they feel safer when they have more knowledge and more understanding. And it's a circle. Look at that. So the circle represents that it's whole, right? It's a representation that we all have all of it. So wherever your type sits is showing you a place where you innately have a lot of resources. And here come the paradoxes. The Enneagram is all about the paradox. Wherever your type sits is showing you where you're most resourced, and paradoxically where you have the least amount of freedom, where you get stuck, where you get locked up. Like I like to say, we're all kind of in a prison of our own making in the way we suffer ourselves. So just know, as we go around the Enneagram and we look at these essential qualities, there's a backdrop to these essential qualities and how they get manifest and how they come out in the world. And we're going to hear from that from Talia and Susan and from Alex. And they all come from one of the different centers. So that was convenient. And actually, yeah, I'll just stop here and ask for you, Talia, Susan, Alex, any comments or questions about that just so far? Maybe not. Susan, you're muted.
I think just what I want to say is I used to think that the Enneagram was kind of almost like a party game. I remember being exposed to it many years ago at a board retreat, and someone had done some studying with, I think, Helen Palmer, and she was sure that I was a 7. And I liked thinking I was a 7, because even from the superficial understanding that I had then, and not much more now, but a little bit more. I liked the associations. And then when I looked at the link this time, and I told you I took the test on the link, and then I did the paid $12 test in the book that's referenced. And, when you had to choose between two statements and I didn't like either of them and what that meant about me, I started like, maybe there is something to this. And then I got really, really interested in why I didn't like either one of those statements and what actually that was telling me about myself. And the most amazing thing to me in this is, you know, I had to like sit with myself for a few days thinking about ambition, because that is a part, I don't really like to lead from there, even it's buried in there somewhere. And if you looked at my life, you would say she's ambitious, probably. But that's,
and Susan, can you tell people what type are you relating to? That will also help them.
Oh, sure. I'm a 3, and I'm pretty sure I'm a 3. I mean, there's a 2 there, you know, that tested high. But so I'm now so curious about the other things that just my relationship with more of the shadow side of myself and where my blind spots are, you know, after having a spiritual practice for many years and being interested in all sorts of metaphysical things. And so I think it's a really amazing tool that I just hadn't been exposed to enough or considered. So I'm so thrilled to be learning from you and Alex and Talia. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Susan. I love what you're talking about is this curiosity that you bring, you know, the beginner's mind, and just always being willing to see something different. And I can see why in the beginning we might think that we're one type and we actually end up being another. And there are a lot of lookalikes, and there are a lot of good reasons for that. There's a lot of things in 3s around the Enneagram, and in each of these different centers of intelligence, we have 3 assertive types: one from the heart, one from the head, and one from the gut. We have 3 more sort of compliant types. So the assertive types are the 8s from the red, the gut, and the type 3 from the heart, and the type 7 from the head. So there's reasons for that. And when we go to the Enneagram, and I start with these different centers of intelligence, it's just a way to orient you. It doesn't mean that if I'm a head type, I don't have a heart, not at all. It just means that the first way that I'm organized, that I'm arranged, is a filtering through my mind. So what I would like to just describe in these different essential qualities is to go around the diagram. Alex, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to touch on the fact when I first started, when I was introduced to the Enneagram, and I was incarcerated. And so being incarcerated, to hear someone ask me a question, what's good about me, that was like so foreign. That was like I was ready to leave the class, actually, because I'm like, okay, they got jokes. Because what's good about me? I'm incarcerated. I'm facing 8 years prison. And so what's good about me? And at that point in time, that was insane. And it was so difficult. And there was this one assignment, and Susan will remember it. She had us to write on one column all the negative things, and then caught me completely off guard. What is the opposite of that negative? And write that. And which would be a positive. And that was the beginning of me to start to see and start to do some inner work. That was amazing. As a matter of fact, I use that same assignment today with the individuals I work with.
I think it's great, because what people are going to hear as we get going from each of these panelists is that the discomfort is the place where we grow, and learning to lean into that is the place where we can start. So really, just quickly, I want you to know, if you're out there and you're a type, you're definitely a type, right? I want you to know kind of what a starting place could be for you about what's right about you. And for type 8s, I start with the 8 because they have enough energy to propel us around the Enneagram. The 8s are the body type, and we start with the base. 8s come to teach the rest of us about aliveness. And 8s are here to impact the world. They also want to be impacted by it. 8s want to feel. They want to feel everything. I have a type 8 son. He says, "Mom, hug me hard." He wants to know that I'm hugging him. I had another 8 say, "Don't give me any effing one-arm hugs. Like, don't even bother." 8s want to know that you're really here. And they're direct, and they have a lot of energy. And with presence, there's a beautiful intensity about them, an availability for everything that's immediate, and it's very strong. And When they're not present, the 8s have like this, imitation of that. And they can be kind of, pushing and insisting on things. That's not the same thing as this essential quality. Presence for type 8 is being vulnerable to what's innocent and what's powerful inside of me, like all at the same time. So take a breath for that, type 8. I know there's a few of you with us. And type 9s we call the peacemaker or the mediator, and 9s come here to teach the rest of us about being and belonging. 9s have this beautiful sense of how everyone belongs, and they don't lose sight of the bigger picture. They have this sense of the wholeness of things and the harmony that can be here when everybody has their part, and they know that the whole is stronger than the sum of our parts. When 9s are present, they're engaged. They don't miss a beat, and they're gentle and they're sensitive. And 9s, when they sort of lose presence, they kind of can be very self-forgetting, and they can kind of go along to get along and just say yes, even though they might mean no. And that's not the same thing as the essential quality. That's like the imitation of it. That's more of like the ego part. So 9s, when they're present, they're here. There's a real groundedness and a belonging, like a redwood tree. I like that. Take a breath. Type 1s are the idealist on the Enneagram. We call them the reformer sometimes. And 1s come to teach the rest of us about goodness. 1s have a way of knowing in their gut just like how things could be, and they have a radar for that. It could be in parenting or in social justice. I'm a type 1, so the Enneagram Prison Project, like dun dun dun, like we know what the true north is, and we've got energy for that. And they're very idealistic. But when 1s lose presence, we become a little righteous and kind of judgy, and that's not the same thing as the essential quality. Can you hear the contrast? I'm saying it on purpose, but lean into the part that's good. Take a breath. I told you it's too fast, right? It's too fast. These are just kind of hitting the highlights. Type 2s are in the heart. We're moving into the green territory. And I know we have a bunch of 2s here tonight. 2s come to teach the rest of us about love. We call 2 the giver. 2s have this, they're like a conduit for this divine love. They know how to do things through the heart. They feel you, right? Even in prison, my 2 students are like, you feel me, right? They want to know, they want to connect. And 2s have this sensibility about how we relate and how we value one another. And they know how to appreciate. And 2s, when they lose presence, they kind of lean in too much, and they start taking care of you too much, and they forget about themselves. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not the essence of 2. That's the imitation of it. That's the ego version. Take a breath. Type 3, Susan's a 3. 3s are here to come to teach the rest of us about hope. And 3s, we call 3s the achiever, the doer. I don't get hung up on the labels, but they're like a shortcut. They tell us something. In their heart of hearts, 3s know how to be what is needed in the world. And they know they can be whatever they want to be. They know that they have this inherent value. I have a favorite 3 who says, before I move. So it's not my value because of what I do. It's because of who I be and what I am, what my heart is, and how I translate that into the world. And when I lose presence, 3s got a lot of hustle, and they can make things happen. And we like that about the 3. It's not like we're trying to do away with it, but it's not quite the same thing as just this, this presence to who I am. Take a breath. Type 4, still in the heart, right? Filtering from the heart. 4s come to teach us about depth and meaning. We call the 4 the romantic or the individualist. And 4s really want to know who we are. What are we doing here? And what's the deeper meaning? 4s are after intimacy, after deep knowing and sharing the dark stuff and the good stuff, all of it. And out of that comes this creativity and this artistry. And when 4s lose presence, they start to be, they can be very melancholic, kind of drama, right? They can be creating meaning kind of out of something that wasn't there. And that's not the same thing as being with the depth of me so that I can experience the depth of you, which is the gift of 4. Take a breath. Type 5 is the type, and we're in the head, right? We're in the blue. So feel the difference a little bit in these types. 5s come to teach the rest of us about clarity. And 5s are what we call the investigator, observing things. But they really want to get into what in the world are we doing here and what's below the surface. They go looking for it. They insist on it. They analyze and they probe and they examine. I have a 5 on a team I'm working in my organization recently, and he said, how much can we question? Like 5s want to know, can we really hold everything up to the light and see what's here? That's the beauty of 5. Sorry, I have a background dog and a beautiful son who's trying to calm him. Thank you. And when 5s lose presence, they start to be kind of know-it-alls and kind of arrogant. And that's not the same thing as the essence of 5. 5s come to know and deeply understand, and they have a lot of generosity in what they share. Take a breath. Type 6. 6 is, we call the loyalist, sometimes the skeptic, and 6s are here to come to teach the rest of us about what it is to awaken. They're like the, one of my teachers, Peter, calls 6 the guardians of humanity. 6s come with this we mind, with a sixth sense about what's going on. I mean, I'm not saying 6s are psychic, but kinda, right? They do really know stuff before it goes down. And when 6s trust that, they have this a way of like lending their intelligence to the group and keeping us on track and knowing where we're going. Very stable, dependable, trustworthy. And when 6s trust that, they are. And when they don't, when they lose presence, 6s can kind of become like very full of questions, anxious, like looking for the worst case scenario. That is not the essence of 6. That's what happens to a 6 when I don't trust who I am. You hope you're getting the contrast. And last but not least, Talia is a 7. 7s come to teach the rest of us about joy. You don't have to spend a minute with a 7 to start to feel that, right? And freedom. 7s, I know a 7 who calls herself a possibilitarian. And and we're going to save Talia's title for the panel, right? Like they're idealists on the Enneagram. They dive into things. They see the world as a bunch of possibilities, right? They form things like Healer Collective to bring everyone together so that we could all be who we could be, right? And they feel for the silver linings and things like COVID. And when 7s become less present, they start to effort at that possibility, to insist on things always being up, as a pushing to the joy. And that's not the same thing as being present to everything that is, and to be free within myself so I can be with every moment, even the heartbreaking ones, all of them. And so 7s come to teach us about that. Thank you, Halita, for the diagram. Take a breath, everybody. So I just want to kind of get into talking to each of you a little bit about, first of all, where'd you go as you heard your type? And you have to give us a little bit of background about you. So Alex, I'd love to start with you if I could. Your sound good over there? Are you good?
I don't have a picture.
Okay, we'll just give you a minute, okay?
I don't know what happened.
Do you need it?
Do I need a picture? If you can
see
hear me,
you.
I don't know what happened to the yeah.
Well, we can see you fine if you can just.
Oh, y'all can see me?
Yeah, we can see you fine.
Oh, because I don't see nothing.
Are you on iPhone or on a computer? Are you on your iPhone or on a computer?
On my laptop. Yeah.
Well, how do you feel? Can you roll with it a minute?
I can adjust to this. Sure.
Good. Well, we're here with you. We see you just fine. And what I know about you, Alex, is that you relate to type 9. And 9s are the type that come to teach the rest of us about this belonging and this love that comes from being, able to include ourselves and include everyone. But the young 9 gets this idea that it's not okay to be who I am. And everybody gets this idea. In 9 different ways, all of us get this idea that it's not okay to be me. And part of this comes because the basic foundation of personality comes from when we're little. And if we have a parent that sees our divine spark and says, oh, let me experience you, then we will become more of that. But often we have a parent that says, you know, that is very different than we are, or they don't know how to be with us as we come. And so we get this idea from little traumas or big, huge traumas that for some reason it's not okay to be me. And I'm wondering, Alex, I know a lot about you, but our listeners don't. How did you get the sense that did you get the sense that it was okay to be, you know, your sensitive self and help everybody to belong as a little guy?
Well, yeah. Give me a second.
Yeah, everyone take a breath. I know that's a big question. And so for all of you listening, like, wow, we talk about childhood with the Enneagram. Yeah, we start there because that's where it starts.
And I don't know how long these emotions will come up, but it's okay. With that question, Alex didn't learn to be Alex until 6 years ago. And what I've learned is, because it was only 6 years ago that I learned how to nurture Alex. Alex was an alcoholic at the age of 5. So how does Alex become an alcoholic at the age of 5? Well, maybe because when he was on the bottle, when he was a baby, he was given alcohol. And I was raised on alcohol. I was raised in a very dysfunctional alcoholic environment. And so nurturing a child wasn't what happened with me. I wasn't nurtured in a healthy way. So I was given the alcohol, which would sedate me, which would put me to sleep, which would get me out of the way, and no one had to be bothered with me. So yeah, so that comes up for me in it. I'm doing better today dealing with it emotionally, but.
Alex, it's so helpful that you start there with us. Halita, we have a slide about the divine spark and the formation of personality. I'd love you if you could put that up for a moment. Thank you.
Hey, everybody.
Can you see yourself again, Alex?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. So this divine spark that that we talk about is the essence of type 9 right now. What we're describing is this sense of belonging, the sense of making everybody else feel like that they're the most important person in the room. This is what 9s do without even trying. That's part of their wiring. It's also part of the temperament. It's just like that the temperament is this animal nature, the inborn way that when people say, well, that's just how I am, that's what they're talking about. And then temperament is reflected back and there's an attachment to the parent. Then that child gets to sort of, that divine spark can come out in the world. But often what we have is this litany of conditioning. And maybe I have a very assertive type parent who didn't get a lot of nurturing also, which I suspect is what was going on in your family, Alex.
Yes. Well, my mother was in the system. Her mother died when they were waiting for a city bus when she was 4 years old. Ooh. And so my mother's Native American. It was in Oklahoma. They were on the reservation. So when her mom died on that bus stop, at the bus stop, they didn't take my mom back to the reservation. They put my mom in the system. So, having a greater understanding of all the trauma that my mom went through helps me love and have compassion for my mom, as opposed to the resentment and the anger.
Thank you, Alex, for trusting this space, trusting yourself, and just sharing these two big stories, right? Like, what does a young woman do? Well, a young girl do when she's put in the system? She survives, and then she becomes a parent, and she's doing the best she can. And one of her parenting strategies was to make you not such a big deal, because children are hard. And she was just a child herself who didn't get a chance to grow up. Alex, where were you when you learned the Enneagram?
I was incarcerated at Elmwood Correctional Facility in San Jose, Santa Clara County.
Can you catch us up to how you ended up there?
Yeah. So where I was, that was where I was physically. But where was I emotionally and mentally? Uh, excuse me.
It's all
I
fine.
was I was drowning in guilt and shame and unworthiness is where I was at. I had been incarcerated free for 10 years. I came off of a life sentence, and I had promised myself I would never, ever be incarcerated again. I was going to church. I was a leader in the church and everything. But the one thing I kept inside of me was I would do all these exterior things, but inside of me, the only thing I can ever really connect with was my old identity. And it wasn't even my old identity. It was my identity, which was a gang member, which was a convict, which was a drug dealer, which was all these destructive identities that I identified with. And I would never say nothing to nobody. I would just try to do more good work and help more people. But I would never tell nobody what I was really, my thought patterns and what was my battle. So 10 years later, it showed up. It showed up. I went back after being going to school, going to college, graduating, becoming a substance abuse counselor, becoming a mental health specialist, and becoming a court liaison, and really helping people. And then I went back to selling drugs. I went back into the whole destructive lifestyle, to the point where my wife, she shared with me one night, I'll never forget this. She said, if I did not witness you change right this minute, I would never have thought you changed, because everything flooded back like I never changed.
So one thing that I know about the 9 is there's a real desire to belong, and that's what part of why 9s are so good at helping other people to belong. And if I don't belong in my family, as you're describing, it makes sense to me how you would end up with a gang, how you would end up on the streets, how you would end up going along with some other place that was helping you to survive.
But it gave me purpose. And I end up at 12 years old as a gang member, being involved in gangs. And that was because it got to the point where I had to fight. I would fight all the time. My sister and I, we're half Black and half Native American. And so when I was younger, I had a whole bunch of big old curly lock hair, and my sister had all this long, beautiful black hair. And we wasn't accepted. It just was not accepted. I wasn't accepted by what was supposed to be people of my same race, because they didn't see me like as a Black child. And then even family members. And then I would fight all the time. And then it got to the point where I got to fighting pretty good. So people, instead of fighting me, they decided to just let me be a part of them. So
People can maybe confused about how a type 9 can fight, but let's not forget that type 9 is part of the gut instinctual triad, right? And one of our most foundational instincts is anger. Anger is the thing that lets us know, is it fair? Is it right? Am I getting what I want? Am I getting what I need? And if the answer to any or all of those things is no, the instinct is rage. And so I understand about the raging and how the displacement for what you weren't receiving was going out into the world, and no one was seeing that.
then in my mind, the way that my brain worked at that time was, I'm getting accepted because I can fight good. So the more I hurt people, the more I be accepted, and the more this acceptance and validation. And next thing you know, there I go. And so what ends up happening to me years later is I had no boundary as to who I would fight. So I end up getting attempted murder on a peace officer. even though that didn't happen until after he hit me in the eye with a billy club. But the reputation I had developed, the police even knew. He was so afraid of me already that he struck me first with the billy club, and then I ended up lashing out, but I ended up getting a very serious charge for that.
It's so helpful for you to just paint these broad strokes of where you were, Alex. And if anyone spent a minute with Alex, it's very hard to believe in your presence. And I want to in a second move to a different center of intelligence. But before I move to Susan, I want to know, how is it that when you saw this tool, you started to connect up? What happened for you to help you to see something different about you?
There's so much that happened, but there was this one component, and there was a component that everyone, and I have to say this because I don't want everybody to think, well, only Susan can teach the Enneagram and have this effect. It was a component that the individuals who came in to teach us the Enneagram shared with us, and it was called love. It's a component of love that we were somebody. We were a name in that class. We wasn't a number. We were a person. And not only that we were a person, it was people who came because they literally cared about us, and they helped us understand what type of person we were, what kind of person we were. And so once I really, really started to believe that their heart was sincere, and I knew that I can learn something from them. I knew that this would help me. And then the day when Susan Herrick came in and she asked me this question, it was so loaded of a question because she's a number 9 and she knew I didn't know the answer. And she asked, what do you need? And I couldn't answer that question. And I made a promise that I'd never be able to answer, that I will always be able to answer that question. Because the reason I couldn't answer it, because I never paid attention to myself. Yep.
And why would you? Why would you be paying attention to yourself if everything around you was trying to tell you to suppress all of that, right? It's so logical the way you're putting it. And Alex is saying something that is not lost on me, by the way, Alex, about being loved and being seen. And it's, we teach the Enneagram in prisons and jails inside of Enneagram Prison Project. We're also teaching in schools, and I have a long time teaching in corporations. And it's the same thing that helps people in Google or Blue Bottle or a high school start to be able to look at themselves in terms of the Enneagram when it's presented in a way that's like okay to be as you are. Thank you for opening up so many things, Alex. This is just the tip of the iceberg for this beautiful soul. But I'm gonna just move to a different center of intelligence for a moment. Everyone take a breath. Appreciating Alex. Susan, when we talk about the heart center, it's like a different animal in some ways, even though it's like, it's still a circle and it's still part of the same diagram. The heart types are not filtering in the same way as the gut types, as the instinctual types. The heart types are filtering with this emotional operating system. And the heart lets me know, do you see me? Do you get me? Do you understand me? Do you know me? Do you love me? Right? That is what 2, 3, and 4 are constantly filtering for and looking for. And by the way, everyone wants to be seen. Everyone likes to be connected in some way, but the heart types, that's their orientation. And so I'm curious, thinking about yourself as a little 3, how did you, or did you get the sense that who you were was valued for who you were? Because the young 3 comes to teach the rest. The young 3 comes to sort of like get the idea that it's not okay to be who I am, that somehow the 3 seems to get this idea that I'm I'm more loved if I'm accomplishing or achieving. And I'm just wondering how that's all landing with you. Oh, you're muted.
It's such an interesting question. And I just want to thank Alex so much for his just sincerity and beauty and depth of what you shared. So I just really felt that. I think I was the oldest of, I was the first grandchild, you know, and my next sister after me was born when I was 3. So I think I had like run of the queendom from very early on. And then and then my life changed with the birth of my sister. And so I think that's when things shifted for me about doing well to get the extra attention, and made me feel like I had to do something good, essentially, to get the attention. So I was, you know, striving always to be better than in things, to do many, many things, to excel at things. And, you know, as I got older and really saw that it was mostly trying to keep, I think, my father's attention, who I still adore, because my parents' marriage was not very functional and finally dissolved, but not till I was 15. So I think I had a sense very young, and especially after my sister Leslie was born, that if I did something right, then that would keep my parents' marriage together. And so I was always, you know, trying to err on that side. And that, you know, that was pretty much of a compulsion, really, and became. And
well,
you know,
I also want to, like, in your defense a little bit, I want to offer that it's a bit of a setup, right? Because our parents are kind of onto these things that we do that make the family dynamic work. And I suspect you were really good at doing all those things that got your dad to like you and got the atta girls, right? Because 3s have this like capacity to pick up what is valued in whatever. The 3s in prison, like they know the culture, right? The 3s in just like on the street in the school, like if my parents love music, I figure out how to play an instrument because that's how I'm going to get the pat on the back. I may hate music, right? I know people who become doctors and they don't like medicine just because my dad was a doctor, right? So I'm wondering, do you connect that in yourself at all?
I do, yes. And I think always made me overly responsible. I moved fast. The ambition part of me and the ambitious part of me, I think it was really, I feel like it was hardwired because in a problem-solving way, I excelled at problem solving. And so, but it wasn't from my head, it was from my heart. Like I always, you know, could stand up for the right thing based on, I think my family always also stood up for the right thing. I mean, even my grandparents, I mean, just going back, pretty liberal and, you know, loving and kind, and family is central, and humanity, just, you know, early on. So I think there was
I want to say just one more thing, because Susan's like teaching so many important points. Listen to these words, right? It wasn't from my head, it was from my heart, right? Like teaching from doing the right thing, or I don't want to put the wrong word around it, but doing something for humanity, right? For the love of humanity is a different driver. And so for all the types, we're really interested in what is driving the behavior, what's the motivator. And this is like lots of types do things for the same, may look the same on the outside, but what you're talking about is this orientation for where it originated. And I think it's so helpful for you to point that out to us. Please continue.
So I think that one of the most relevant things is I was a clothing designer and I was very good at it. And it was something I sort of fell into and was just naturally good at parts of it and had a business sense and so forth. And when I was looking for my next career, because I knew that clothing just wasn't doing it for me anymore. And even though it looked good on the outside, it didn't really resonate with sort of heart and meaning. So when I was on a buying trip in London and I went into this apothecary, the first thing I did is I inhaled, and it was like the most amazing smell. And I picked up this bottle of lavender essential oil. So as it turns out, when you smell something, it goes into a different part of your brain, right? It goes right into your limbic system. So you feel your heart before you think. So before I even knew what happened, there was such it was like transmission, divine transmission, because it all of a sudden changed my life because I knew what I wanted to do next. It was that. And then I started studying aromatherapy, but there's no accident or coincidence that at that juncture, with that openness, and from what you're saying, that I think it's so incredible that I just inhaled and it bypassed, and I didn't have time to even catch what that meant. And then it was transformational. Right. And so I think, my work over the past 25 years has been very heart-led, and heart-led in business, which is not that conventional, but we've
the paradox.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where the ambition comes in, because my association with ambition is sort of being a part of institutionalized greed, which, we have run counter to the way we've financed and run the company and the way people have come together in the company for, the past 25 years. But being at that crossroads and having that present itself as it did was kind of amazing in the context of everything that we're talking about now.
It's poignant, the example you're using, and also as a woman, right? And it's not easy to be heart-led in business as a woman, because as a type 3s are, we call sometimes the chameleon, right? They can really sense how to blend in and be just like one of the guys in order to be successful or whatever. I heard you didn't do that, right? You stayed true to your heart, which is really what the 3 wants to do and can do. And there are these layers of things and conditioning that happen in our society that make it even harder on us. Alex talked about being, part Black and part Indian and not belonging anywhere, right? Like the systemic racism that's on top of how hard it is to just having had to withstand the trauma that you went through. Like there's a whole nother burden that people are carrying. And this is the important part that America is really waking up to. These are two very poignant examples from 2 different centers of intelligence of how there's a hopeful little 3 in there, right? Who wanted to be, and something in your, waking up to knowing that is actually what you were designed to do. And that's where you built your success, right? Thank you, Susan. Just pause there and everyone take a breath.
Yeah, sure.
Remember, it's too short. It's too short. So I'm putting a plug in for part 2. But Talia, I want to really thank you for your impulse to gather us all together and highlight that in the head center, 5, 6, and 7, right? These are the types that are coming to teach and to figure out how we can be safer, how we can be more secure. This is the intelligence of the head types, and there's a way that they're sort of perceiving things and looking at things and connecting things. And 7s are, in Buddhism, we call it monkey mind, where 7s can go from thing to thing to thing to thing and connect them all up. And I'm a little partial to 7 because I've been married to one for 25 years. And the 7 really does have this sort of possibilitarian, way about them. And the young 7 gets this idea that it's not okay to be who I am, like 9 different ways we're all getting this message, and you don't, and so the young 7 figures out that like people can get stuck in hard things and trapped in pain, and the solution that 7 has is brilliant. They figure out how to use that sensibility for possibilities and sort of like imagine a better place to be or somewhere else to go, or looking for escape routes and kind of being anywhere but any place that's painful. So I'm wondering, how is all of that sort of making sense to you tonight?
Well, I like that you use the term young, not shadow, which is nice. I certainly still have aspects of the young, sort of scattered, going from thing to thing to thing, inspired very easily, seeing the, silver lining and everything. But growing up, I would say I was, as much younger, 7. I grew up in a home, I came from, my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, Jewish, very head-based, because there was so much trauma, I think, after the Holocaust and after, their family was destroyed in front of them, and surviving that and coming to America as young immigrants, that I think, we were taught, and my father was taught to be very intellectual and to not feel, right, and not look at what was wrong. To the sort of, the messaging in my household was everything's okay, we survived, we're here, we're in America, life is good, enjoy it, you have resources. And also, being intellectual was important, strategizing, thinking. What my father went to Harvard and, was an only child. And so, growing up, that was important, was education and sort of thinking our way. I was taught growing up not to really feel when I was sad. My dad would just say, you're fine, just enjoy life, and I was also taught really, in a way, we were able to travel a lot and have a lot of cultural experiences and not really dig into anxiety, feelings of unworthiness. I think with that sort of family background, there was a lot of like, why did I survive and the rest didn't, a lot of guilt there. And we weren't really taught to look at that. And then when I was about 20, so then
I'll pause you there for a second, because there's so many good examples, right? This conditioning thing about how we form a personality. Halida, could you put that up one more time for us? This is a massive slide. I almost hesitated to put it up, but I do think it's really important for people who are learning the Enneagram. You've got to know this conditioning ring is a massive, massive part of how we form how we hijack that beautiful impulse to be in all the possibility and figure out how to be anywhere but here, how to get out of Dodge. And if I have a dad that is reinforcing that and saying, hey, you're fine, right? That's what 7s figure out too. Hey, I'm okay, you're okay, you're not okay, hey, I'm okay. Because that was the message of how you had to be. So I always just kind of like to give yourself I'm not trying to excuse anything, but I do really think we can appreciate where it comes from. You're sharing so many reasonable, insights about yourself. Thank you, Halida. So when you were 20.
So, I had all of this repressed anxiety. And when I was a little girl, I remember looking in the mirror and having a very deep spirit looking into my eyes and seeing the universe, like at the age of 3, and then just sort of shoving that downward and becoming sort of a party girl in high school. And, we moved to Europe, and I ended up, being a socialite in New York City after that, and was platinum blonde and like 90 pounds and suffering deeply on the inside, all the good fancy stuff on the outside, but, depressed. And by the time I was 20, I was addicted to drugs. I was addicted to opiates, living this really fast lifestyle, 7s run from thing to thing to thing to thing. And I was always trying to fit in, and I'd be in Miami Beach with these, Wall Street guys and models and nightclubs and trying to talk about philosophy with these Wall Street guys. And there was actually nothing to fit into really on a deep level. And I was trying for that, but wanted to keep this outside appearance. And, that just wasn't working. It was killing me. I was a zombie. I was going to die. And
I want to pause you here too, right? Because we often sort of, I think people can stereotype so quickly, and people can sort of say, well, the 7s are fine because they're always having a good time. Well, Not really, and not from what you're sharing, right? Like the more of a personality that we see, right? The more party girl socialite that's like the reputation for the 7, the bigger the cover for the pain. And what you're saying is so vulnerable that inside you are dying. And I just want people to appreciate that's these are all 9 different covers for deeply felt pain. And coming back from that is no small task.
Right. And I think a lot of it was because I didn't want to feel that pain. And it's so, I've learned since then, I had a pretty profound spiritual awakening about, when I was 21, 22, and have been narcotic and alcohol free since then, and through plant medicine and shamanism and a bunch of Buddhism, a bunch of different studies, learned how to sit with myself and the parts of me that were uncomfortable, and literally, like one night in the jungle, could feel the abuse from my family lineage that was placed upon them, leaving me on a cellular level. And then I was able to really, be in my body in a deeper way. But I was, we run from all of this and create even more anxiety by not wanting to feel the anxiety. And, the drugs or the whatever, gambling or the sex or the food, Susan, like in some way we're all addicted. There's a spectrum, right? Whether it's our phones or we're all trying to escape. But how much easier it is now just to know that I can sit with it. And I think part of what I still struggle with is the daily monotony of, I love my husband, but I like new things. I like new ventures, building new companies, new, insights, the constant insight, constant high. I don't really have many vices anymore, but I am always looking for the next thing. And
I'm going to pause you here for this part too, because this is a really helpful thing. And I'd love to go back to Alex next and Susan to connect this part, right? I think people are hungry to understand this, because you have really, each of you in important ways, looked at a lot of nooks and crannies on the inside, right? This is a developed panel. These are people who've been looking at themselves. And really, when it comes right down to it, we're all pretty fiercely addicted to our personality, right? We all want to have a good life. My teacher, David Daniels, used to say that we all just want to have a good life, right? And so when the 9 wants to have a good life, right? Like I can't narc out enough, right? I can't, drink myself to happiness, but it doesn't stop me from trying. So when my personality is not doing it, I reach for something else. And that's what I suspect you were doing, Talia. You were trying these other things, right? But it's the same intelligence that's reaching for the drug to feel better that eventually is like finding your path back to you, finding your way back, right? And all the plant medicine and all the curiosity, like there has to be a solution, but ultimately their only way out is in. For everyone, there's the same path, no matter what religion or how we get there. And all the great spiritual traditions know that. And when I get there, I'm still stuck with me, right? It still comes up, right? And so I'm a 7 and you're a human being. So you might still get bored, right? And that doesn't mean you leave your husband. It just means like it comes up and you stay. What else would you add to that, Talia? Because this is like one more nugget of what we can leave people with when you start to understand your type. The 7 is the type that is always figuring out how to escape. And when 7 learns to stay, they start to realize that the freedom that I think is out there is actually my inner playground.
I wouldn't add anything else. That is in itself a lifelong task.
Right.
Yeah.
And thank you for creating Healer Collective so that we could come here and hunker down in that truth together.
Thank you.
Yeah. How about for you, Alex? The 9, what is the part of you that you see as the sort of the truth that you keep coming back to, the part that you know, but then you keep sort of learning and relearning as a 9?
Well, I had to. It's amazing. I had to go back to the pit of hell to accept the truth, which means when I went back into prison, I realized that my life was more valuable than to be locked up in cage like an animal. I accept the fact today in every day that my life is so valuable and that I'm supposed to make a difference, not just in my life, but in this world. And the reason by accepting that, and I go back to it, because every time I turn around, I'm asked to share. I'm asked to preach. I'm asked to do something that's going to make a difference, and not to mention my job. I'm a program manager at a reentry center, which means I'm the first person many individuals come and see when they're released from incarceration. So they're still broken too. And so I get this great opportunity to do what? Make a difference in their life. So I keep coming back to that. And that means I have to be healthy. I have to be aware of me. So I have this phrase I say, and I haven't said it today, so I get to say it now, that the river of life flows from the inside out. And for me, that means what's inside of me, that's what's going to flow out of me. And so if I want the goodness, if I want the grace, if I want mercy, and I want the love and the kindness and the compassion, if I want understanding to flow out of me, I have to have it for me. And so I always come back to it. And I come back to it because I'm supposed to make a difference in this world.
You so are, Alex. And I really appreciate the way you're putting it, because this way that nines can help everyone else to feel like they're so valued and so important and essential, and they listen to everyone. As you're saying, when you know that the river of life flows from you, like if you don't know that about you, you're not going to make a darn difference to anybody around you. And that's really true. Thank you. Susan, how about for you? What is the part of 3 that you're onto, sort of like onto, but still learning, and the part that you keep getting sort of reschooled in your self-understanding?
That ambition and being competitive is really the translation of that, and the other side of that is to do things with great heart and meaning. So it's really about purpose, and it's about love. It's not about material ambition. So everything changes when my ambition is really coming from my heart, and what that does and the way that that affects people and the way that we run our business from that heart space is very different than sort of the other ways to be ambitious. So it's accepting the energy and life force that I have towards getting things done, and getting things done in a very loving and kind and purposeful way to do my best to make a difference.
Can you say thank you? And I think that, and pulling this word ambition for type 3 is such a juicy one, right? Because the ambition is that the 3s are the type that get stuff done. They're moving mountains, right? And I'd love for you to say a little bit more about EO and how you're doing that in a just a more descriptive sense. I think people are very curious to know.
You know, I always thought that EO would be a great little more lifestyle business that we could raise, and my co-founder, I was also married to for many years, and we've been divorced for 13 years. We have a child together, and we run the business together still, right? So there's a transformation in there in terms of relationship and ability to consciously make that decision together to keep running the business and to keep working together. And then, essentially our relationship transformed, and we're family. And, so in that transformation, that also brought about a lot of transformation, because making that change in the way that we did opened up a lot of questions, my own and other people's questions about how does that happen? How does that work? How do you, what's the next step? So I'm rambling and I kind of forgot the question that you asked me.
So I just asked you to elaborate a little bit more, and I'm glad that you mentioned your partnership. In a moment, we're going to open up to some questions. So if you have some, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I wanted to just highlight it because it is remarkable for you to be in this transformation with your partner. I've been married 25 years. I also run a business, a nonprofit called Enneagram Prison Project with my partner, who's a 7. Big shout out to Rick. And and 25 years ago, we couldn't paint a wall together. Like we could barely stay married. 15 years in, we were in therapy 3 times a week. It's a remarkable thing you're speaking to translate from the heart and be a parent and stay in partnership is, like, I think a lot of listeners would agree, it's no small task.
And then I think too, in scaling the business, it was sort of like, well, I didn't think that this is how we would go down the path, but this is essentially what's happened. And, we're kind of a small, big business now. And, we brought in a president and CEO a year ago, and we're working, sort of side by side. And I can see now that there's a way to expand other things that I want to know about and really rely more on my strength and what's close to my heart, and have other people with their own strengths be able to help us all together evolve. And so that's a much different place to be than being even afraid to hire a president, because, it so disrupts my identity, which, it actually hasn't. It's been really expansive.
Right. Thank you for that. And Talia, how about for you? And you're also running an organization. Will you please share what your title stands for?
My title, CEO, stands for Chief Eternal Optimist.
Perfect.
And tell me
so
more.
Perfect.
Tell me more about how you arrived at that.
I just tend to see what's good in everything and what can be, vision for the future, not what's wrong. And I'm sure that's frustrating for some people, because I don't like to look at the problems, and I don't like to fixate on, and you need to look at problems in order to change them into something better. So it's sort of a blind spot for me.
Right. Well, and the background that you have, especially, battling your addiction and coming clean, literally, with not just the addiction, but with your heart, right? That was your way out. And so I think it's just really important that people see that there's the natural thing that we are is the thing that we think that we're not enough of. And that's the thing that we try to be more. And that is the crazy thing. Right? We're all trying to be more of who we really are. 7s come with this effervescence, right? You don't have to teach a 7 to be that. That's just how they are. But 7s lose contact with their heart. A young 7 gets this idea, there's not enough nurture coming my way. I'm going to make my own nurture. I'm going to make my own fun, right? But it doesn't actually cut the deal. It doesn't really give me what I want. So I just always coming back full circle to the whole thing. The chief eternal optimist is the person who's determined to know that we can all heal if we can be with who we are. And we all tend to, set out to do the thing that we most need to learn, is how I feel about it. Yeah.
Yes, I'm learning along the way, helping others to feel empowered and heal and become whole while doing it, for myself.
Yeah. And I'm seeing this in the chat from Tara, who is a fellow 7, I know, on the path. And Tara's talking about emotional responsibility being very helpful, and that's sometimes very hard to have an acceptance. Can you explain a little bit about that, please? Emotional responsibility I learned about from a type 7 who was a therapist, who I plopped down in her chair and basically said, fix me. And she asked me if I was willing to take 100% emotional responsibility, which I'm a type 1, right? So we haven't talked a lot about type 1s, but we know how to sort of comport ourselves, and we have this, way of looking like we're fine, but underneath we are so angry that the world is not the way it ought to be, idealistic like Talia, but in a different center of intelligence. And when she asked me if I was willing to take emotional responsibility, I was. In my mind, I thought, I'm paying you. Of course I'm willing to take emotional responsibility, duh. But I didn't say any of that. I just said yes. And I signed her form. And then I realized as soon as my husband was a total jerk, then everything I felt was his fault. And that is why she asked me the question, that emotional responsibility means I own me. Like the thoughts I have come unbidden, right? But the ones I follow, I put emotion around, they make me feel a certain kind of way. And then the emotions that I have, I start to do certain things, and all of that comes in a pattern. And on the Enneagram, we can point to it like a map. We can plot it. We're so predictable. And the predictable part for type 1 is this being asleep to the anger. So being emotionally responsible means my husband he might have been a jerk, I'm sure I was one too, right? But his behavior was something that I was using to justify my anger instead of recognizing that that's where I gave up all my power. So the Enneagram is about knowing where, in a patterned way, we give up our own agency, we give up our own security, we give up our own connection here first. And when that goes on, then everything else suffers. So having emotional responsibility means that I own me, and I can see if I'm a type 9, like you were describing, Alex, and I go along and get along, then and I keep getting in the pattern of saying yes when I mean no, then I'm losing contact. Are you what would you add to emotional responsibility, Alex, and how you've learned that?
It's amazing that you use the go along to get along. And I did that so long that it caused me so much prison time. It was ridiculous. And then, of course, I would blame it on everything outside of me. But once I started to just started being responsible for Alex, many times, I get on these panels and the waterworks come on, but it's okay with me because I'm okay with that today. And it's not because of what Susan said, and it's not because of what my mother did, and it's not because of nothing external. It's the fact that I'm able to feel today, I'm able to process it, and I'm able to express it. And so I take all that responsibility, and I don't have to blame nobody. It's nobody's fault. And actually it frees me up to be me. It's a freedom in it. I can't hear.
Sorry. Susan, anything to add from you about emotional responsibility and how that lands with you?
I think this is what led to the question, which I asked earlier of, do you think, can your type change? Yeah. Because I think until I did the sort of work that I've done and, been practicing for a lot of years, that I feel like I'm much closer to understanding what emotionally responsibility is in the way of the ability to respond.
Right. Because some people ask often, well, can our type change? And actually, no, our personality, if you have kids, often you can see like, God, they just come out that way, right? They just right out of the chute. They are the way they are. What our personality is, when we're not able to be present to who we are, kind of the only resource we have is to do more of what we do. And so we're pushing our own agenda. So it's not that personality changes, but our capacity to be with who we are has these different, my favorite teaching is through the wisdom of the Enneagram and that school of thinking, where these different levels, if you will, of presence. And the less present I am, the more personality shows up. So that when I start to make more contact with myself, I realize I don't have to use that one and only one strategy. I have lots of different strategies. And all the way back to the beginning where we talked about that quote from Sherry Uber, that everything outside of me is an aspect of me. And so if I am a 3, I have the ambition to lean into, but if you look at the diagram, type 3 and type 9 have a line that connects them in the center part with the triangle. And so there's a lot of 9 and 3, and there's a lot of 3 and 9, and we can move around and be flexible. So thank you for adding all of that. I want to invite everybody just to take a breath. And as we're winding down here, we want to let you know that there'll be a recording of this evening, and we're going to be sharing the diagrams that we shared together. I also want to let you know a little bit about how you can learn more, because we don't think it's really very fair to open you up to the Enneagram and not give you a way to go in and learn more about it. Enneagram Prison Project, during the pause during the pandemic, we have pivoted from teaching primarily in custody and taken the same programs, the same teaching with the Enneagram that Alex learned when he was on the inside. And we've retooled them for a robust learning on the outside in a course that we call A Path to Freedom. And the first stepping stone on that path to freedom is a program called 9 Prisons, 1 Key. And Halida just put a link up to it, so you can click on that and you can see what our program is. We're in an offering right now where there's an application, and we're intentionally creating as diverse cohorts as we possibly can. We have a donation-based tuition model, and we invite you to come and check this out. If there's a way that it's a way that you can drop in and go deeper with a guide who's trained by Enneagram Prison Project. And application closes October 19th. Thank you, Halida. Talia, handing it back to you of anything else that you'd like to add as we wind down here and this gathering of hearts that was your mastermind.
Sure, this has been such a beautiful conversation, and thank you all for your vulnerability. It's really incredible. I just clicked on the link to the Enneagram Prison Project Prison Key Training, and I saw the quote, "It's not just difficult to do the work alone, it's impossible." So, you know, the inverse of isolation and addiction is connection, and that's what this work does. And I find it just so incredible because anyone can do it from all walks of life. It's accessible to all, it's free online, and it's just a way to understand ourselves and our fellow humans better. So to me, it's really part of the vision of what Healer Collective is about, is you know, bringing modalities like this to the forefront for many people to experience. So just thank you so much to you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Talia. Yeah, just to say at the end, before we got on, we were all sort of dropping into our hearts and holding the space for who knows who's in our audience tonight. We're all in some kind of lockdown in one way or the other in the world. And if you haven't come up against yourself, I don't know how that's been possible. We're all working really hard to figure out how to navigate, you know, our inner terrain. So safety in numbers, I really want to thank you for tuning in and being part of this. And thank you, Talia, for connecting us all.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you for the healing.
Thank you, everybody. So lovely to be together.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you all.